Welcome to the Pack the House Show, where we have conversations about sharing your faith as you walk through life with others.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Pack the House. I'm Andrew Osborne, and I'm joined by Pastor Jason Tabor.
Hey,
and Marshall Murphy.
I looked at the camera that time.
And this week we're joined by Becca Hartman.
Hello.
Becca is one of our newest staff members. Why don't you explain who you are and what you do here?
I am the Play Area Coordinator at Fishers and part-time administrative assistant.
And in addition, awesome at having faith conversations.
Yep,
So
Absolutely.
excited to have you on.
And
Yes.
Becca's been around for a while, but now she's officially on
Yes.
staff, so we're excited to have her.
And also Marshall, did you say him?
Yeah, people met him last week, so
Yeah.
he's old
Yes.
news. All right, well, this week we're continuing our Word That Connects series, and we are specifically talking about how God saves people. So what does that look like? When we're talking to our friends and neighbors, is that something that rings true to them, that they need saving, or that they're looking for a God that saves them?
Becca's nodding. Go ahead. I would say yes, but go ahead.
yes, they need to hear that, but I don't think a very hey, you need to be saved, and here's what you need to do it.
Right.
Mhm.
So what's the problem with you need to be saved? Why is that not a starting point?
I think just from a surface level understanding of it, it puts people on the defense immediately.
Absolutely.
It kind of regardless of any of the other circumstances, if you start a conversation putting someone on the defense, regardless of the topic, you're not gonna. You have diminished your chances of really connecting with that person on other things beyond that.
Like,
All right. So
What did I do this time?
Yeah.
Right. It's like,
Yeah.
hey, what the heck? You
So
know?
channel your young person now. You're here because you're the youngest. No, but seriously, there's value in it. Because this is a thing that I say to people all the time. When we begin any conversation with you need or you should, or you ought to, or you can even sometimes you can just it puts walls up. It goes on the defensive, and I think sometimes, sorry audience, older people have trouble kind of connecting with that. Because there was a time, right, when especially Christian Bible worldview was authoritative.
Mhm.
Right? Everybody at least acknowledged it as truth. I think that's not true anymore. So if you can, talk a little bit about, I'll see if I can filibuster long enough. Talk a little bit about, first of all, am I right when I say that?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. Regardless of the age, I think it's more prevalent in young people, regardless of when you were born. I think it's just a natural tendency to trying to be independent on your own, try to figure things out. But sometimes, to varying degrees, there's a natural level of resistance to being told what to do, being guided, in something that you haven't maybe quite got down yet. Regardless, I think yes, in young people especially, there's some pushback there.
Mhm.
And I think that's not just for people that are my age, but I think to varying degrees you all were that more so when you were younger and your parents before you. And
When we were younger.
You're very
we are
young,
all
so-
still. I
Thanks,
mean,
Marshall.
People in general.
Can we
are just-
tilt the camera?
Yeah.
But I think it's not necessarily an age thing, like you're saying. I think it's more of
Human
our
nature.
culture has changed a little bit. Like in the past, there was a truth, and people acknowledged that truth, even if they didn't like it. That was what it is. But now you hear from people, well, that's your truth.
Mhm.
Like that's just not what I believe. And
What's
so-
true for you is true for you, and what's true for me
Right.
is true for me, and you really can't tell me about yours or about mine because we don't kind of connect there. Obviously, I would say it's okay. I believe what we believe, teach, and confess is capital T truth.
Absolutely.
What we find in Scripture is authoritative truth, but that isn't always a good starting point for those. You talked last time about worldview.
Right.
And how sometimes the worldview just doesn't match up. And that's one of those worldview things where a lot of us as Christians, especially older Christians raised in the church, are conditioned to say, well, this scripture is absolute truth.
Mhm.
And that might be true. That might be it is. Don't report me. S. Geiger at Cornerstone Lutheran Church.
Did you know?
That is true. But lots of other people who are outside the church, especially younger people, don't look at truth that way. So that's kind of one, I think, obstacle of you need to be saved. But there might be other difficulties with starting at saved, right? That's a pretty theological Christian term or idea.
I think too, the other thing about coming at it as like, oh, you're sinning and you need to be saved, is that the person probably already has feelings of knowing that it's sin, but not knowing the word sin, that they know that they're in a sticky situation or they're stuck or have regrets about things. And so when you come out at that and like you're highlighting those feelings, they're going to shut down and go like, oh, you can't tell me how to fix this.
All right, so you just told us something really important there, which is a person who maybe is not yet a follower of Jesus,
Mhm.
doesn't have the vocabulary sin,
Yeah.
and therefore wouldn't have the vocabulary saved,
Yes.
but they are wrestling with things that we would categorize as either sin or the effects of sin, right?
Yes.
And so tell us again what those I'm going to say buzzwords, those code words are. You named some.
I know. What did I just say?
Good thing it's on recording.
Rewind.
Yeah, back up 10 seconds. So I heard sticky situation.
Oh yeah.
I heard regret. What else?
I think they probably are already feeling shame and guilt.
Shame and guilt.
Like if they're in a situation or just things from their past that have stayed with them.
Baggage, maybe.
Baggage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a word that I hear a lot. Baggage.
Mhm. Trauma
Yeah.
and the effects of that.
Yeah, drama especially. I'm having a thought, but it's not coming to me. So continue.
And I think if people hear you say that stuff is, you're doing something wrong because of that, they get defensive. And a lot of people will like themselves, no, I'm not wrong. They're wrong for telling me I'm wrong. And then they'll
And
try
then
to defend the thing they're doing.
Yeah.
Even if they realize it's not a good thing for them, they'll,
Or because they realize it's not a good thing.
right.
So they're going to defy it.
Yeah. When this was my marriage relationship, right? When I know that I'm in the wrong, but I don't.
Never.
When I know that I'm in the wrong, but I don't really have a good way out or quite want to admit it yet, my natural reaction is to be defensive.
No, you started the fight.
Actually, I'm fine and I'm right, and it's your problem.
I'm not grumpy, you're grumpy.
Yeah. Maybe literally. Get out of my life. So yeah, sometimes the defensiveness, and this is actually a good thing to keep in mind. A lot of times I find this when I'm having faith conversations and the person that I'm talking with becomes defensive. That can feel really hard and sometimes scary, right? Often it means actually they're wrestling with something. Two things: they're wrestling with something that I'm saying, and number two is usually they're testing me. Is this a safe person? The poking and the prodding, the defensive, really is often about, is this person safe for me to go further? So best thing, right? Like, be as strong as you can. I'm gonna say this to the camera now. Be as strong as you can in those situations. It's not about you. They're working through something. So the more that you can hang in there and be gentle and be kind, that door will open.
Yeah, maybe they do feel guilty about it, and they do realize they're in a sticky situation, and they're coming to you hoping that you're not going to beat them up even more.
Right.
And a little bit expecting to be beat up. And that's not because Christians are bad. It's because that's all the world. that's the culture we live in, right?
I think they really want to know the truth.
Yep.
They're waiting for somebody to gently and kindly bring them to it.
Right. And the thing that I'm going to say this, we've said it on all of our recordings probably. The thing that we're circling around here that's worth pointing out is in this scenario we have set up, the person that we're speaking to has already shared regrets or shame or guilt. And so, which is to say, we don't have to go announcing that they have them. That will not go well. But in this scenario, you said they want to know the truth. And I think that's absolutely right. That works best when the conversation has led to that point. When they have kind of revealed the point at which their current way of looking at things doesn't satisfy. doesn't answer the question.
Yeah, so it's not that you have to go digging for those things in their life. If they come to you and share this with you, it's because they trust you.
Yep. I have regrets that I can't get out from underneath. I've got shame or baggage that I carry. And now they're saying I want a different answer.
Do you think that they come to these people because, I mean, mainly because of the relationship, but I feel like a lot of the times when I'm having these conversations, it's because we haven't even talked about the sin or the saving. We've just talked about life. And I've been able to be vulnerable and share my baggage and my things. So it creates the trust and the comfortable place of, okay, because I don't live in those things anymore.
Yep.
Absolutely. I think that's a good place to start too, because regardless of whether you're quote unquote saved or not, we all still live in a broken world. We all still carry some sort of baggage. We all still deal with hurt and pain and brokenness. And so that's common ground that we have the opportunity to share. But when it comes to that point where it stops for those other people, which is, that's it, this is life and it sucks and I don't know what to do. Thanks be to God in Jesus, we can go beyond that and say, hey, there's more than just a broken world. There's more, there's hope, there's new life. And that's the door in.
So let's use this to kind of shift the conversation and get a little bit more specific to this topic. I think so far we've talked really well about like how to do a faith conversation, which I love. And I want to not gloss over the point that you kind of sped through, which was a great one. Which is, it starts right with, you said, talking about life, and then being vulnerable kind of first. But a lot of that takes time. I think a lot of it is just
A lot of time.
talking about life, chatting with another mom at the playground or in the drop-off line or whatever. And always want to reframe this, that counts, right? When we think about evangelism, that's it. Not because I said a prayer or made a Bible verse or put a sign on the street corner. Because I had that conversation. How are the kids doing? How, the basic stuff. Because that lays the groundwork for other things. So if you're doing those things, count it as a win. Praise Jesus for you.
Yes.
Yeah, and of all the conversations I've had with like my neighbors about faith, none of them started because I went to them and said, let's talk about faith.
Yeah.
It all started.
Nor did they, at least early on, come to you, I would guess,
Right,
and
no.
say, tell me about faith.
Right. But they know I'm a person who has faith.
Yep.
And they trust me because I have normal conversations with them and hang out with them. And so when issues come up, they know who to turn to ask questions.
Absolutely.
And when issues come up in my life and I'm going through hard things and I'm sharing with them, even me processing out loud with them, my go-to is always coming back to Jesus, and that will come up. And I'm not even telling them like, here's what you need to do. I'm talking about my own problems and going like, but this is what I know. And I often always will say, I am so glad I have Jesus. And almost in a joking way, it's not a joke, but to them, it's a little bit more like downplay. Like,
Yep.
I don't know
So
if that's okay to say downplay Jesus, because I don't think you should downplay Jesus.
I would use different language, but I
Yeah.
know what you're saying. No, it's a way of putting it out there in a approachable way.
Yes,
so
that
I-
sounds really good. Don't downplay it. Put
Yeah.
it out there approachable.
I hear you say that. So glad I have Jesus.
Yeah.
And as your neighbor, I can either dig into that if I want to,
Yeah.
or let it go by if I'm not comfortable yet. So I like that
But it's
approach.
not confrontational because it gets
No.
back to your truth versus their truth. You're
I'm glad
saying
I
this
have
is true for
It's
me.
for me.
Mhm.
And
And
they
it-
may hear you say that and be like, well, that sounds great. Why don't I have that?
Yeah.
So if I can put you on the spot a minute,
Cool.
if somebody were to ask you, you say to them, I'm so glad I have Jesus, and they were to ask you why, what would be the follow-up? What would be the next response?
Because I know that I have sinned, and that a lot of my sin from different phases of life, I felt like I carried with me and beat myself up. I was like the shame and guilt person. And then
Love what you did there. Keep going.
I found Jesus. Jesus found me, and I could continue to grow in that. And I don't want to go back to those feelings. Like,
Okay.
I want to live in this place.
I love what you did. A lot of what you, all of it. There's more. A couple things I want to point out that I heard there that I thought were really great. You said the word sin early on, and then you said shame, guilt, and we would say baggage. I like that because you used a theological word, right, a Christian word, but then you connected it with, so we already established the person you're speaking to doesn't have that concept,
Yeah.
but you connect it with regret, shame, guilt that they do know. So really great work there in kind of saying this is what we mean, you know, bridging the gap, so to speak. The other thing that I think you're on a good track, and I want all of us to play this out, is I was like this. I had the shame and the guilt. So there's the common ground that Marshall mentioned. But then I found Jesus, or Jesus found me. Don't worry too much about the theology of the phrasing in that moment.
I usually
Perfectly
just
fine.
say, I have Jesus.
There you go. And I don't want to go back to that, what I was. So what you're pointing to is this idea Jesus saved me has made a difference in my life, a positive difference that I don't want to go away from. That's so inviting. And speaking to a person who wants a different answer, that's the inviting piece, right? What I want all of us to play out is, we've kind of talked to that point. How does this specific idea, Jesus saves people, saves me, saves us, how does that help us answer the question, so to speak? How would we sort of share with our neighbors what is that positive impact, that positive difference?
I guess for me, if I have things in my life that I'm feel guilty about or regret, those things can weigh me down. But if I know that despite those things, Jesus still loves me and cares about me and wants me to be with him for eternity, I can have peace knowing that despite those things, I still have that.
Yep.
And it frees me from feeling weighed down by that.
Okay. I'm going to echo a little bit of that. Language that's been resonating for me a lot lately is the idea of the clean slate. I first started thinking about it, talking about the kind of the why do we worship conversations, and why do we begin our worship with confession, which is not a fun thing to do, but it's because we have the opportunity in that moment, not only to say, these are the things that I brought with me, that I wish I didn't, but also then to receive immediately the release from those things. In the worship service at Eagle Creek that I was in this week, the absolution included the phrase, don't let them be attached to you anymore. They've been separated from you, don't let them be attached to you anymore. And that so much resonated with me. So that idea of because I'm one who, I always find myself falling in the same hole. Yeah, plenty of them. And so that idea of, not only am I free from this, but I'm free from this again and again and again, really resonates with me.
And I'll echo that.
Nice.
Keep the train
Yeah.
going.
Follow the bouncing ball.
For me, it's the clean slate, but it's also that continual renewal piece and that transformative work continually that Jesus is doing in my life through his Spirit, through the church, through his gifts that he gives to us, and through the word, that he is continually taking this broken, sinful man that I am and making me more beautiful, more loving, more kind, more reflective of who he is, which is so much better than I could ever be. And that because I know how broken I am, and I know how much he is working in that to transform that.
So you are an interesting person to have in this conversation, because audience, Marshall is a striver. By this I mean you're looking to be, I heard this last week too, you're looking to be pushed and formed and molded and improved. And it's something that I see especially in a lot of young people, and especially in a lot of young men. A lot of times they don't have a good outlet for it, but lots of them want it. So I'm saying this only to point out, if you have someone in your life who you have the sense that they're kind of the self-improvement type, listen to Marshall's words and think about how you would speak those words to that person in your own language. But if you have someone in your life who's a climber, your words, I think, speak really well to that.
Well, and I think what you're saying could be a good way that we can communicate this topic to our friends who may be living with guilt, because they want to improve also. And when we can say to them, the things in your past that you've had to work through and that you've struggled with, the struggle makes you stronger. Just like when you're working out, it doesn't feel good at the time to be lifting heavy weights all the time. But getting through that struggle makes you stronger in the end. And God uses the bad things that we've gone through in our past, or the bad things we've done, to shape us into a better person.
And the thing that separates that perspective from the world's perspective,
Yes.
which is very similar, saying, hey, lean into the struggle, just get through, get better.
Push harder.
Yeah, right. The thing that separates our view from that is that it is God's power in and through us, because I know that I cannot.
Right.
I've tried. I cannot get through this on my own. But it's God's power in and through me that as he is working through this with his grace to transform me, he's making me so much more than I could ever be on my own, because I know how broken I am.
Eventually, you'll learn that you can't do it on your own, and you have to rely on God to get you through it.
And let me say one thing. Everything, I agree with all of that. I also recognize that to a person who is in that mindset of work harder, push harder, do better, this is going to sound way too easy. Can't be that way. It's too easy. It's too simple. I need something more. This is a really, really good opportunity. And, we get all sorts of pushback along those lines. I would classify it as, I want to believe this, but I can't for some reason. The great thing about doing evangelism in this way, which is to say, we've talked through, this is just true. This is what works for me, what's true for me, what I think will help you. And the great way about doing it in that way is when I say my thing, Marshall says all that great stuff about this is God's power doing it, and the response is too easy. You don't have to convince that person in that moment. You don't have to do theology or reason them or apologetic them into, agreeing that it is this way. All you do is say, well, this is what really works for me, what I strongly believe is true, what I think will help you. You put it out there. They take it or they don't quite yet. But your work is done by having put out there something inviting, something good for them. Is that fair?
Yes.
And I would agree with all the things you all said.
She's going to echo our
Yeah,
comments.
just circle it back around, echo.
Okay.
This is an echo chamber.
Feels like a good ending spot, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, Becca, it was really great having you on
Thank
today.
you, guys.
And Marshall
This was
back again
fun.
was fun
Thanks
too.
for having me.
Yay.
So, hopefully see these two again from time to time, and some others recycling through, rotating through. The more voices we can get doing this, the better. So, thanks for being here with us.
Hi.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Marshall, would you mind praying for us as we wrap up?
Yeah, of course. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for your great love for us. We thank you for your mercy that you have poured out upon us so richly through your Son, Jesus Christ. We thank you that you have made us to be your children, that you continually renew us and transform us and lead us in your grace every day. Father, guide us and lead us as to those around us, that we may share your love and your grace with them, how you have impacted us and transforms us. Also that more people may come into relationship with you and have a knowledge of your saving love for them as well. Guide us in our actions and in our speech this week, and help us to share your love with everyone. Thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for joining us. Have a great week.
See you later.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for the Pack the House show. For more content like this, or to connect with us, visit our website, cornerstonelutheran.church.